Right now we have a presentation. It's Little Xaymaca Commune, History of Little Jamaica, and it is going to be facilitated by DeiJaumar Clarke. And he's so I won't introduce the commune because DeiJaumar is going to do that himself. Welcome and thank you so much. And you know, this is the neighborhood that's hosting us, so thank you folks for making it not just like this venue, but really we've had other smaller events in the lead up to this, and it really has felt like the Unity and Struggle Forum has been welcomed into the neighborhood by folks that we organize with. So greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, comrade. Enough respect to the Unity and Struggle organizing team. I really appreciate you inviting us. We're a pretty new collective, so please round of applause for the Unity and Struggle organizing team. We also appreciate the fact that we were initially upstairs, we had a table upstairs, but now we're downstairs. So, you know, shout out to comrades, you know, and collective power. I usually don't do this, but as I grow in my organizing, I guess for the most part, like I grew up in church, conservative, and then I became agnostic, but now I'm delving more into African spirituality through my organizing. So I just wanted to call on to all the ancestors to guide this presentation, guide our steps as we organize. I call on Queen Nanny, I call on Asada, I call on Rosie, I call on Dudley, I call on Sharona Hall, I call on all the ancestors. Give us the power to burn down the plantations, give us the power to eliminate white supremacy, give us the power to eliminate capitalism, and give us the power to present a great and lit presentation. Before I proceed, I just want to say the previous panel, shout out to the previous panel, the Black Power panel. Yeah. I literally would not be able to do this if it wasn't for them, the work that they've done. Norman is like my OG, I can call him at any time. Sometimes I'm bothering him, saying, yo, what was the 60s like? What was it like starting the AAPA, you know? I'm actually working on a documentary with Rick right now. Shout out to Rick, another one of my OGs. David Austin, anytime I call on you to, you know, help us with our study group, you always, you know, come on Zoom because I know you're in Montreal, so I appreciate you very much, David. And I thank you for writing Fear of a Black Nation, because that book really like grew my organizing abilities and just like my radicalization, just understanding Black power within the context of Canada. So shout out to that book. And also, if you have the opportunity, please purchase that book, Fear of a Black Nation. Everyone needs to read that book. And last but not least, shout out to my comrade Wasun. You were, I guess, considered the I would say, the younger generation of the panel, but I look to you as also an OG, someone who, like, I would say, I'm trying to do a lot of the things that you were doing in the 2000s. So I appreciate your guidance and just, you know, always picking up the phone, calling me, asking me how the commune's going, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so I guess a good way to begin is, so with the Little Xaymaca commune, we were created because we saw in the community, so this is Little Jamaica, all right? And Xaymaca is the indigenous word for Jamaica. And some folks say Yamaye, so sometimes I use it interchangeably with Xaymaca, Yamaye. And yeah, we noticed that, I mean, as Black folks, as brown folks, as poor and working class folks, a lot of contradictions in this community, and a lot of mosquitoes in this community, essentially, especially through the nonprofit industrial complex, really exploiting the community, like really exploiting it. We all see the LRT, right? the LRT decimated the community, the renovictions, the unhoused folks, and while Son mentioned a lot of these contradictions, so as a result, we created the Commune. And yes, we'll present. Okay. So what is the Commune? So the Little Xaymaca Commune is a community counter infrastructure model created as an alternative to government programs and systems. Our goal is for everyday people to practice working together and relying on each other to get our collective needs met in an increasingly anti-Black, capitalist, and fascist society. So again, Commune, we can use Commune interchangeably with Palenque. And first and foremost, shout out to like some of the Commune members who are here today. I shouldn't say your name, should I? No? Okay. All right. All right, I'll keep it on the lows, Yes, wrap it up. Cool. Yeah, so yeah, we're a Commune, and we were created because of the internal contradictions within the community, and we realized that we needed an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist organization within the community, which essentially pushed leftist ideologies, for example, Marxism, anti-capitalist rhetoric, also anarchists as well. And just from a neighborhood perspective, I personally believe neighborhood organizing is truly crucial because that's how you reach the masses. You knock on folks' doors, you ask them, how are you doing? Do you have food? How can we help you? And that essentially leads to food organizing, where you develop infrastructures where you can assist people, and tenant organizing, right? Are there seniors? How do we help the seniors? How do we, connect with the Norman Otises of the community and build those relationships? The youth, how do we connect with those youth? Because, right now, like, youth unemployment rate is super high, and it's even higher for Black youth. And in this community, I personally feel like the youth would really benefit from a Commune. Next slide. And we also interchangeably use Commune and Palenque. And just to give folks an understanding, Palenques were the societies and the settlements where African enslaved folks would create when either resisting oppression or resisting colonialism and slavery. So our political line. We are an anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist neighborhood organization inspired by Abi Ayala, Maroon and Palenque societies, Afro-Indigenous land relations, and the Black radical tradition. So those are the traditions that really brought us together, and those are the traditions that we look to provide us with guidance in order to connect with the community, whether it's through the history. Even in this community, there's a large Caribbean population, but there's also a large Latin American population as well. Also East African folks as well. So yeah, looking through these traditions to really connect with folks. And the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist, that portion is really important because, like I said, the nonprofit industrial complex has really decimated these communities. So it's important that our politics are clear cut, We are not here to exploit our people more than we've already been exploited, right? We are here to essentially expose these contradictions, So next slide. Queen Nanny and Maranage. So I called on to her previously. We pay homage to ancestor Queen Nanny of the Maroons through the militant practice of our political line. This means that we must act through political and cultural self-agency. So Queen Nanny was the leader of the Maroons in Jamaica, and she's also a hero of Jamaica. Now, whether or not the Jamaican government decides to actually, be influenced by Queen Nanny is another story. But Queen Nanny definitely inspires us. That's why, like, when you look at the top right corner, we try to have Queen Nanny. We try to be influenced by her. We try to be guided by her because, for one, in the African communities, like, we had a lot of women who were militant leaders. We had a lot of women who resisted colonialism. And sometimes that spirit is like still here today. I mean, personally, it's in my mother, and that's another story. But yeah, using that same spirit, to essentially defeat neocolonialism, capitalism, and just some of the contradictions that we experience in the community. So shout out to our queen. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm gonna speak a bit about the history of resistance in Little Jamaica. So again, we're all in Little Jamaica right now, and I think it would be fitting that we talk about that history, and because it goes way back. So Little Jamaica has a long history of resistance, starting with the Black Action Defense Committee in the late 1980s. The Black Action Defense Committee came under heavy surveillance due to their work confronting police brutality following the police murders of Albert Johnson, Buddy Evans, Lester Donaldson, and Michael Wade Lawson. Sorry, I'm super thirsty. So with the Black Action Defense Committee, again, it was started in 1988, and it was started after, I would say, a decade long of protest. And it was started by the likes of Dudley Laws, who's passed in 2011, and Charles Roach, Sharona Hall. Sharona Hall was a queer Jamaican woman who was a socialist and an internationalist, and Lennox Farrell. So a good thing about really looking at our history is we also see that oftentimes, we look at the present today and we wonder, where was that Black power? What was that history? And honestly, it was in a lot of our leaders in the past, like Sharona Hall. Literally, a lot of these leaders had socialist ideals. Some of them, I would say, more Pan-African as well, but very much against police brutality, against, I would say, anti-Black racism, and even internationalist movement, because during that time, there was the apartheid in South Africa. So a lot of these leaders actually resisted against, from an internationalist perspective, through that movement. And I also want to mention, so we have a table outside, and in that table, there's a notebook called Project One. So Project One was the undercover TPS investigation where they essentially infiltrated the Black Action Defense Committee and took photos of Dudley Laws. So what they did is they actually rented an apartment across from his office. So his office is at 393 Vaughan Road. It's literally just walking distance from here. And they took photos of him, all right? And they tapped his phone, and this was I think they spent over $1 million infiltrating Black organizations. So when we talk about the Black Power era, especially with the previous panel, this delved into the 80s and 90s, all right? And if you look at the table, you can see literally some of the photos that these undercover police officers took of Dudley Laws in front of his office. All right, so their activism forced the provincial government to create the Special Investigations Unit in 1990, which was the first civilian-led police oversight body in Canada. At the time when that was created, that was a big deal. Obviously, that's gone to shit now. But during that time, that was a big deal. And like my Carmen Wasson mentioned, the police killings did, regress a bit in the 90s. There were large demonstrations at 13th Division when TPS murdered Albert Johnson in 1979. So 13th Division is the Pigs Playpen down the street near Cedarville. That's another story about why they called it Cedarville also, due to the gentrification of the community. But the community would mobilize together and actually demonstrate in front of 13th Division. So like I said, this history goes way back. Next slide. That history of resistance was brought to a powder keg following the police murder of Raymond Lawrence and the 1992 police acquittal during the trial of Rodney King. This led to the 1992 Young Street Uprising, where Africans took to the streets and vented their frustrations at systemic oppression. It forced the Ontario New Democratic Party government of the day to enact a slew of anti-racist and equity public policy initiatives. This rebellion is the first and only one led by Africans against racial and class oppression in this metropolitan area. All right, so you can't really see it well, but these were some photos of the rebellion, or the 1992 Yonge Street Uprising. It was a Bad C protest, or a Bad C-led protest, and then after that, some of the youth just said, fuck this shit, we're gonna burn shit down. And because we're angry. And this was leading up to all of the killings. This was leading up to high unemployment. This was leading up to just anti-black racism and just, poor and working class struggles. So the youth, along with their allies, essentially lashed out. And a lot of folks, has anyone heard of this story? Okay, so a small amount of folks. I mean, there's a reason why you haven't heard of it, because they're not gonna promote that Africans rebelled, right? And I think that's a huge reason why you have to read Fear of a Black Nation, and you have to look through our archives, because that history of resistance was not only in our city and our country, but in this community. And also, so after that, Bob Rae was in power. There was a lot of legislation, so the government finally admitted that there's such thing as anti-black racism, so that became a thing, and there was also a lot of funding for programs. But that scumbag actually got hired after, or enacted to government, Mike Harris, which essentially reversed a lot of the progression that we made. So next slide. Okay, so groundings in Little Xaymaca. Our foundations are rooted in political education. Groundings or groundations are monthly meetings we host in the Eglinton West community, used to share knowledge, read and discuss Black African political texts, and practice relational building. The name is derived from the Black Power movements in the Caribbean in the 1960s, particularly the Rastafari factions. So this photo is Walter Ronnie. He wrote the book Groundings with my brothers. One of my favorite books. I literally cried reading that book. Just his ability as an intellectual, or I would say a guerrilla intellectual. Shout out to the intellectuals and academics, by the way. I made a post and some of y'all got mad, but the good ones, I mess with y'all. The good ones, I mess with y'all. The bad ones, I have issue with you. But anyways, we meet once a month for our Groundings in Little Xaymaca sessions. So tomorrow is actually, so it's usually the last Monday of each month. It's Monday now. I think it's Monday now, yeah. The Commune came to an agreement that Monday works best. So that's tomorrow, and we're gonna meet at 7 p.m. At the Bad C office, which is at 504 Oakwood, and I'm also I'm actually an employee of the Black Action Defense Committee. So a lot of that history that I mentioned, and a lot of history that Wasson mentioned, I'm now, I guess, a part of the younger generation, in that organization. And I can honestly say, you mentioned Rita. Rita is my supervisor. So a lot of the great things you said about Rita, I agree and I feel it, because for the longest time I was working at a different book list. Some of y'all might know me from that store, but I wanted to get into organizing. I wanted to do it full time. I wanted to be, in communities, especially amongst our people. So Rita gave me the opportunity actually, to do that. I think it was literally the session when we invited you, David Austin. We invited you to the session for Fear of a Black Nation, and then I invited Rita at the time, who was the executive director, and now I'm working with her. And one thing that I will say is, with the nonprofit industrial complex, there are some good nonprofits who can allow you to do the radical work. So I use kind of Bad C as that foundation to go into communities, but then at the same time, I said, look, at the same time, I'm not wearing an agency hat right now. I kind of want to radicalize the hood. So here's our breakfast program. Here's our, political education program, because We're not here as an agency to push the nonprofit industrial complex. We're not here to exploit neighborhoods. We're here to, actually build people power within these communities. Next slide. Black Liberation Schools. So this year we are piloting a Little Jamaica Stewardship Project, a Black liberation educational system that prioritizes land-based knowledge, community engagement, and autonomy practice on the unceded territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Chippewa, and Mississauga peoples. This school will be designed to support children and adults alike to move in the camaraderie first with Asase Ya, or planet Earth. We learn our lessons from the life ways of the waters, the trees, and the soils. So we gotta radicalize the youth them, We gotta radicalize the youth, and that's really important. So even when it comes to like some of the work we do with children, I know if I know someone who likes graphic novels, I'm like, here, take this anti-capitalist resistance comic book, but yeah, just really, sowing those seeds of like, radical education. So next slide. Oh, by the way, go back, sorry. Our comrade Erica, you can speak to her more about the Black Liberation Schools. She, I would say, is the head of that project. Next slide. Survival programs and mutual aid programs. So one of our comrades is Afro-Cuban, and he was able to go to Cuba, and as a result, we said, you know what, let's raise some funds to bring to Cuba, because we all see the US aggression. They literally have their knees on Cuba's neck, and as folks from the Caribbean, Cuba has done so much for us. Cuba has done so much for us. And just Black liberation and African liberation. They've sent soldiers, doctors, and we can't allow the US to, essentially strangle them. So this is an opportunity for us, especially in this community, A lot of us are from the Caribbean, a lot of us are from the Latin American region. It's an opportunity for us to really build solidarity with one another and understand that, look, we may have some differences, but when it comes to the Palenque, we can all connect under that understanding. We can all connect under that history. So we were able to send some funds to Cuba. They had a soup kitchen. We had folks doing some great survival programs, and seeing a video saying, thank you to the commune. Like, honestly, it made me very emotional, because it shows that, you don't need to be a huge organization. It's literally a few of us, and we were able to raise funds to help our Cuban comrades. So Jamaica, we were able to raise some funds to send to Westmoreland. I have an uncle in Westmoreland, Little Bay. That's the community that a lot of my family lives in, and Westmoreland was hit really hard by Hurricane Melissa. So we were able to send funds, and a soup kitchen was created, a school was improved, and as far as it was decimated, and we were able to make some renovations, and a breakfast program was created out of that, So, shout out to mutual aid and just connecting with comrades, not just locally, but internationally, to create these dual power structures, against the state. Emergency housing insecurity needs met. So, honestly, and emergency food insecurity needs met. Honestly, I would just say, for us, sometimes it's like, okay, you're a Black trans person and you need some funds because the system hates you, everybody hates you, people look at you in disgust. We need to come together and raise funds so that you can actually live, live in society, because a lot of our folks, we literally just our mere existence is death. It's like we're looking forward to death, and that's honestly what a lot of people go through in this community. So whether it's groceries, you're a comrade that needs groceries, raising funds for that. You're about to be evicted, let's raise funds for that. We've been doing a lot of great mutual aid work in just a month's time, and it's changed folks' lives. I heard someone asked us if we were a cult. Yeah, someone asked us if we're a cult because we just raised funds and gave it to someone, right? You know? And I'm just like, that's how fucked up our system is. That's why we need communes, because literally it was that easy. We raised funds and we gave it to someone who was in need, right? If we followed the nonprofit industrial complex model, that shit would take months. We might not even get the funds because there's a stupid bureaucracy of you gotta go through this person and that person. With the commune, you don't have to go through none of that shit. Just let us know what you need and we'll get boots on the ground and make sure that, you know, you're assisted. And that also delves into like tenant organizing as well. So a lot of our work is honestly just going to barbershops, pulling up on Oakwood in front of the new LRT building. You know, it's like this big, shiny, white space, so much room, you know. For me, that's the opportunity to organize in that space and just, you know, take over, you know. So, the breakfast program in Lawrence Heights. So we were able to start a breakfast program in Lawrence Heights. Right now we do it on Mondays and Wednesdays, and it's an awesome opportunity to connect with youth. Again, building those survival programs, connecting with community, and we're not doing it for charity. We're doing it to empower communities and create these dual power structures where essentially, you know, it's the aunties in the community that run, you know, the program. It's not an agency, right? So the other day I raised some funds. And then I just told the aunties, look, this is your money. Y'all can set up a meeting, figure out how you want to, like, you know, use the funds. You know, maybe we need a toaster. You know, maybe we need some ackee, even though ackee is hella expensive. You know, yeah, just really connecting with the community. And Lawrence Heights is a community that's going through right now, I would say, the biggest gentrification project in Canada right now. So there's so much opportunity for like really building community autonomy. Yeah, next slide. All right, fighting gentrification. So like other African communities, I just want to say, the color scheme, I don't know what happened. It was like the Jamaican colors, but I guess this laptop said nah. But yeah. And also I want to mention, even though it had the Jamaican colors and we are called Little Xaymaca Commune, we're not a Jamaican nationalist organization or a collective, so everyone can come and join as long as you share our politics and you want to grow with comrades and just, you know, really like build community power and an autonomy. So like other African communities in so-called Canada, Hogan's Alley, Amber Alley, and Africville, Little Xaymaca has been under siege and neglect. Due to the LRT's 16-year construction, our community now experiences chronic houselessness, rent evictions, and job insecurity. We demand better, period. To enforce these demands, we propose radical action for Black peoples to have uninterrupted reciprocity with the land Toronto. So what's so funny is when we were trying to figure out this presentation, what we were gonna write, my other comrade wrote some like other shit that might implicate us. So this is a very edited version of what we want to do in the community. This photo was literally in one of the businesses, I would say a few months back, and it's just a reflection of the community. Over 300 businesses have been closed. Residents, you know, being forced to leave the community. Obviously, AGIs, rents increasing a ton. You know, like this is all a result of gentrification, but it requires real community organizations, grassroots organizations, you know, people coming together to fight against gentrification, because it's possible, you know, it's very much possible. And when it comes to like the nonprofit industrial complex, I'm gonna say it again, they've really decimated this community very much, you know? The very place that we're in, the Nia Center of the Arts, one of the board members is actually a part of Metrolinx. Oops. And not to mention, this building is not even accessible to the community. It's a big reason why, you know, it's a big reason why there's a lot of fundraising happening, is to essentially pay the cost. So a lot of and listen, this is not my words. This is literally the community's words, because when you connect with comrades, when you canvas, when you talk to people, that's what they tell you. So part of community organizing is seeing these contradictions, talking to the community, and doing something about it. Next slide, yeah, next slide. All right, how to support our efforts. So food distribution space in Little Xaymaca. Again, space is tough, but shout out to Batsy and Rita. Technically our space or our headquarters is at 504 Oakwood. This is where we do a lot of our organizing. It's the Batsy space, but due to the great work of Batsy, they push for this radical work. And again, when you look at the history of Batsy, it is something that they would support. So food distribution is important. Support the breakfast program in Lawrence Heights. Part of working in the community is a lot of folks, you know, first and foremost, when you enter in the community and you don't live there, people are they're gonna be skeptical, like, yo, who's this youth? You know, who's this person? But as you grow with the aunties and the community leaders, you essentially gain that love and you gain that, I would say, trust. I guess that's the best word to use, trust. So the other day, I brought some food to the community, and I'm thinking I'm doing a good deed. It went into the wrong group chat, so some other aunties found out that it wasn't at their building, so as a result, I got cussed at, you know? I got cussed at. But you know, I mean, I was mad at first, but I think when it comes to being in community, you have to understand that we're dealing with folks who are going through like dire like experiences, and a lot of these community leaders are like drained. That they're literally drained and burnt out. So it's really vital that we can come with some of our perspectives and our politics and our eagerness for organizing to help these community aunties, you know, and help them build neighborhood autonomy. So attend our monthly study session. So political education is really important. Contribute to our upcoming mutual aid campaigns in Liberation School. You sign up to attend and create curriculum for our Liberation School. Contact Erica, she's in the back. And follow us on Instagram at Little Xaymaca Commune. This is where you... So I wanted to say this before, before we're talking about the panel and how each person on the panel is literally like my OG and someone who I can call and bother and ask them about a whole bunch of shit. But another one is sitting in the front row. Diane, please stand. Please. So I know you probably saw, who's this cute lady in the front? Diane Liverpool wrote for Contrast newspaper. We have a lot of archives at our table. Please check out our table. I think it's a pretty lit table. A lot of cool stuff there. But Contrast was like the Black Power newspaper for us as a people. And Diane wrote a lot for that newspaper. And she was a photographer and a journalist. And she literally gave me this book today. So it's The Assassination of Fred Hampton, How the FBI and the Chicago Police Murdered a Black Panther. All right, so the part of the work is connecting with older folks who have like a lot of cool books and archives and experience and knowledge. So I'm proud to be your adopted son, you know, in the struggle. And I just appreciate all of your help and your mentorship. When I go to a protest, you know, you tell me to be careful, you know, and yeah, it's so funny because if you go to Blackhurst Cultural Center, she has like a photo on the wall. It's just, you see this cute little lady with the beret, you know, in front of the Contrast newspaper headquarters. So please, round of applause. Yeah, one question? Max 2 questions. Yes.
I was going to say thanks so much, DeiJaumar. For everyone who doesn't know how much DeiJaumar does for the community, now you know, and you should follow up and make sure you follow what he does for the city.
Thank you. And I appreciate the kind words. Also, shout out to my comrade, Kevin Emmons, in the back. And shout out to Talmanisha John, my good comrade. Fuck all those anarchists online talking shit about you. All those wicked elders talking shit about you. You're one of the realists. You know, your understanding of political education, your analysis, like, it's just genius level. So, yes, shout out to the Caribbean Solidarity Network. I'm also a member, and please join our study circles. Sometimes when you go there, you just pull up. Tamanisha's there, and like, it's important for us to, like, you know, contribute, but more time we're just listening to her talk. You know? So to that question, that's a tough one because for me, I worked at a different book list, so and I was around a lot of elders. So I got the opportunity to actually get their perspectives. I actually got the opportunity to read a lot too. So like, I know reading's become like a lost art, but like, please, like, reading is so important. Like, reading is so important, and like, it's tough and it takes a lot of time. For me, Sundays are my best reading days. Sometimes I just pull up to a coffee shop and I just decompress and I just read and I learn and I try to, you know, like right now I'm trying to read up on a lot of indigenous resistance movements, you know, like I've read so many Black liberation texts, you know, and just, you know, really understanding those perspectives, because that's how we build solidarity, right? Knowing history and understanding how we can really connect our struggles. So that, making sure your algorithm is tight online, that's really important, you know? And also testing it out, right? So like in this community, barbershops is where a lot of dialogue happens. So when I pull up to a barbershop, like that's where I get to speak my mind, and if I hear any ignorant reactionary shit, I call it out. But when you run into these things, and I don't agree with doing it to like everybody and random persons because they could be a neo-Nazi and you don't know, but like in safe communities, whether it's, hopefully it's the dinner table for some folks, barbershops, you just, you know, it gives you the opportunity to like improve your politics and just express it, you know, and then get the pride to like, you know, say this is what I stand on because so and so and so. Connected with comrades, creating study circles, you know, nerding out, you know, but when you nerd out collectively amongst each other, it's very helpful. Yes, hopefully I answered your question. And I think we have one more. I know. I'm just gonna be quick, 30 seconds. Yes.
How do you deal with like, so you mentioned obviously, but we're also trying to address
Mm-hmm.
job loss. How do you address that sort of we are in commune, but also people in the community, the youth in the community are also facing job loss, loss of this. So it's like, you know, how do we address that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's a great question, and it's not a question that I fully know all the answers to. But I will say that youth unemployment is a real thing. So even though we have our politics and we're anti-capitalist, survival is everything, right? Survival is everything. Like even when we're in our own nonprofit industrial model of things, or we're in an institution. Again, shout out to the academics and intellectuals who are doing great work. Sometimes it's tough because like you know that you're very close to like white power and like these white power structures, right? But at the same time, it's like survival is important, survival is key. So if you can use the spaces that you're in to like, you know, whether it's having these conversations or if you're a teacher, you know, slowly radicalizing youth, or you know, starting trade organizations. That's one thing I want to do. I want to get into trades. And so if there's youth or Black youth who want to like, you know, they don't know how to say yes, boss, you know, in the corporate field, you know, we can give them like opportunity to like get into trades, or just like, I would say building those relationships with those businesses like in this community, right? I have a youth. A lot of my like, I would say organizing is connecting with businesses and say, look, I have a youth who needs a job, you know? how do I get them to work there? You know what I mean? So like survival is important, and like that's why survival programs are also important, because like how can I talk this shit to you when when you're hungry, right? So sorry I took too long.